There's a thread stitched into me, woven through Gaelic people, my ancestors, my family, and my community. I imagine this Gaelic landscape like this. Hands reaching out of the sea, holding candles above the water. Even as the waves crash and the winds blow, the flames are not extinguished. Test. Ismisha Bradley Murphy. My name is Bradley Murphy. Sauna Bayanead Ahami. I'm from East Bay. Hami era via Gopud, era Gaelic San Coig no Shia Bliana. I've been working on Gaelic for 5 or 6 years now. Ha Kellatad, Ha Garatad, I guess Ha Jelavichad Ahami. I'm a musician, gardener, and also a designer. Ha Coig Glonshan Akam. I'm a Cape Breton, Unama'ki. My family has been here in Cape Breton, Unama'ki for 5 generations. And Shin Shanad, and Shin Shanad, and Shanad, and Taher, I guess, is Misha. My great-great-grandfather, my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and me. As I have come to learn through my research, Gaelic is an indigenous culture with very deep roots. It is a culture indigenous to the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. The language relates to the land of its origin, and the customs and traditions are all linked to a reciprocal relationship with the natural world. Long before the Gaels arrived on the shores of Unama'ki, their culture was molested. The history is sitting on the shelf. As any therapist would tell you, to rebuild from trauma, we must start from within the self. We go through the past and we look for the root of the pain. I give thanks to my Indigenous brothers and sisters of Turtle Island who live on the lands known as Canada, who bravely bring forward the shadow stories of their past in order to repair the future. Thanks to them, the whole country now knows about the wrongs that were committed by the hands of the government. I give thanks to my Black brothers and sisters who march, speaking to the reverberation of slavery and mistreatment of human souls that still echoes in the communities. I also give thanks to the resilience of my own Gaelic ancestors and community members who were able to keep the music, the language, and the stories alive for me to experience today. These are the clues to begin rebuilding and repairing my relationship with my heritage, the land, and myself. This island known as Cape Breton, that is in fact Mi'kmaq territory named Unama'ki, is one of the only geographic regions in Canada where Gaelic remains a community language, with native speakers still alive, and transmission still occurring from mother to child. Though it is fragile, it is alive. Growing up, I experienced fragments of them through the music, encounters with neighbors, but most of all from my grandmother, Clara Gillis, from Grandmyra. She knew the language, but she didn't speak it in my lifetime. I heard that she would talk with her brothers and sisters if there was something that she didn't want her kids to know about. And when she passed away, I began learning the language. I started slowly, and still I'm plugging away. In 2019, I applied for a bursary offered by Gaelic Affairs in Nova Scotia. I was granted the opportunity to study Gaelic song on the Isle of Skye with Christine Primrose. in Scotland that summer. And I'm traveling with my friend and mentor, Robyn Carrigan.
Smisha brú yarig nictoshik Carrigan, agus rukuk sa hukuk mi an an alapanui, gan dukim mo speish an an balan ear, shidamic ficto, is gudig mi an an Ellen Cabret and Kuchok, vash ger bala hidni, agus sound an ruin iver avami. She Gael a Hanam. I'm Robyn Carrigan, and I was born and raised in Nova Scotia. I lived in Westville in Pictou County and also on Cape Breton Island, near Sydney and on Point Edward. My people came from Gaelic Scotland and Gaelic Ireland in the late 1700s to early 1800s. I'm a Gael.
Robyn is also a Gaelic language leader, learner, singer, and musician who recently moved back home to Cape Breton after living in Vancouver for many years. Having pride in our heritage is something we both have in common. We're also both musicians. In Skye, I will focus on songs, while she will be improving her language skills. I guess I'll be improving my language skills indirectly. I'm now going overseas to be in the original land. This is a thread of ancestral memory. July 1st, 2019. 4 hectic airports, 3 big cities, 3 airplanes. Crossed the Atlantic Ocean in a single day. As the plane approaches, I can see the shores of the Rocky Highlands. The wheels are lowered and touch down on a Glasgow runway. After we get through the airport customs, I go straight to the washroom. And I must have been already in a jet-lag state because I left and came out into the sidewalk, and Robyn looked at me and said,
Bradley, where's your suitcase? Well, we were at the Glasgow airport. We'd been traveling a long time. We started in Sydney, Cape Breton. We go to Toronto. We're in Toronto for a while. We fly from Toronto to Glasgow, I believe. And then we're exhausted. It's an overnight trip. It's like morning for us, or night for us, and it's morning there. And we're spaced out. Yeah. Very spaced out. But I've been there before, so I'm familiar, and we're going to go into town. We're going to find our hotel. We're going to get cleaned up. We'll get something to eat. So we come outside to catch our bus at the waiting area, like an island that you just step across. There's traffic on either sides. And I look down beside you, Bradley, and you just have your fiddle case. I was like, oh, Bradley's traveling awfully light today. He really doesn't have much luggage or anything. And I was like, uh-oh. I'm thinking, uh-oh, he's left his luggage somewhere. So I don't want to cause any disturbance or get anyone upset or anything, because we're all very, very tired. So I just say, Bradley, where's your suitcase? I'm thinking to myself, Glasgow has had terrorists. Glasgow has had, like, somebody ran into it with a car, I think, at one time and tried to set a bomb off there. So I'm thinking, if you've left your luggage somewhere, may cause a little bit of fuss in Glasgow, so I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to insinuate that anything might happen. And then what happened?
Went back to the washroom, and already there was security guards barricading off the doors, telling me that I couldn't go inside because they were doing something. And I told them, my suitcase is inside there. That's mine. They said, that's yours? I said, yes. He said, we almost just shut down the airport. Thankfully, he let me through, and I got my suitcase and got out of there. And we got onto a double-decker bus and avoided what could have been a catastrophe beginning to our trip in Scotland. But I got out unscathed, and we got the bus to the taxi station. We found a driver to bring Robyn to her friend's apartment, and she was going to be staying there for the night. And I'm headed to the Citizen M Hotel in downtown. And I was so tired by the time I got to the hotel, only to find out that my room wasn't ready. So I left and found a park, and found this area in the park that was kind of behind trees and hidden. And I lied down in the grass and I fell asleep by the tree. And after a couple of hours, I got up, made my way back to the hotel, got my key, and took the elevator up to the 8th floor. My room is a modern white cube. I control the lights with an iPad. I select a setting called Desert Sunset, or Savannah, or Safari, I don't remember, something like that. And the lights turn to orange and red hues. I press a button and the window closes automatically. I dive into the feather bed and I fall asleep again. July 2nd, 2019. I wake up. It's evening. I'm still jet-lagged. I want to keep sleeping, but I know I need to get up now if I'm ever going to adjust. So I get up, I go downstairs, I exit the lobby onto Renfrew Street, and walk until I meet Robyn and her friend Dana. We locate an Indian restaurant. Somehow Indian food in Scotland is the best. It's incredible. I don't know what it is. The streets are full of people and tourists. Tourists are people too, I guess. The buildings are ornamented. Red, yellow, and gray stone reaching high to elaborate cornices. The ground stories holding high-end fashion stores, restaurants, this and that. Exciting, loud, and busy. The smell of street shawarma. Dana shows us a gin bar in a historic building, and they make all their own gins. Gin, like whiskey, is a Scottish symbol of cultural pride. I don't really drink, but I decided to try. Some of them are infused with Scottish kelp from the Isles of Lewis, where we'll be heading in a couple of days. I'm quite impressed to experience the sights and tastes of a city like Glasgow, but that's not why I came to Scotland. July 3rd, 2019. Early morning. We are on a train headed to the western coast of Scotland. The smoky city fades behind us, and we are plunged into lush green lands cloaked with purple heather. I'm relieved to be out of the grinding city, with all the noise and the cars, the airports, and we chug over the Glenfinnan Viaduct, featured in the Harry Potter movies, you know it. I see the silver sands of Morar, homesteads and white sheep scattered in the fields. The train approaches the coast of the country and the sea appears in the distance. We arrive in a small town called Mallaig. It's sort of like a transition town. It's by the water, there's a lot of boats, and the train runs through, and there's ferries that will take you to the Western Isles. We deboard the train, we shuffle down the street with our suitcase to the ferry terminal. It's a pretty cheap ticket. And the ferry will take us to a place called Armadale, and that's on the Isle of Skye. On the ferry, the mainland recedes behind the mist, and the cell phones come out and pictures are being taken as passengers capture images of the beauty. July 5th, 2019. The Isle of Skye is the original home for many Gaels. I know that they were cleared from here almost 300 years ago, but I definitely heard the same story over and over again as I grew up. The fields where they lived and farmed were replaced with sheep, and their homes set on fire with the hopes that the memories would be erased and that they would never again return.
I've heard about Maddy Ford and Horan because she's, like, as I say, a Gaelic poet, and I was always looking for female songwriters or female poets or inspiration. I mean, of course, I just thought it would be closer to maybe my own experience, maybe get some inspiration that way. So Ellen Eli Nachyo by Mathy is it's a song about Ceòlas of longing, of her longing for leaving her homeland, Skye, and having to move to the city for work and for love. And she married someone, and I think he was from the islands, maybe himself, but they ended up in Glasgow. They had to for work, and she made a life there. And then things turned bad for her. I think after he passed, she was working for someone as a domestic and got accused of thievery. There's some conjecture whether she might have actually taken something, but we don't know. But anyway, a woman died and all her things were left, and maybe, something. She took a little sweater or shawl or who knows what it was, but she got arrested. And when she was in jail, a huge outpouring of poetry came out of her. She just started composing poetry, and she wouldn't speak. She had no English. They were talking to her, and she was completely, alone there in Gaelic. So she wrote Miskije Luknam Bierla, I'm tired of the English speakers. And then after that, she had a huge career as a poet. And this is the one about Ceòlas. And this one really I can relate to because I lived away from Cape Breton for so long. And the whole time I was away, I was homesick. And it took me a long time to get back. Just like it took her a long time to get back to Skye. And she talks about, although her hair is gray now, with care and worn out, and the sun has shone on 50 years of her life. She still remembers what life was like and what it's like to see the Isle of Skye. And so for 40 years she was suffering, and she got her suffering down in the middle of town, Yeah. So I lived in town as well. It was like a wild
city.
Yeah, in the city. I was a wild child from the woods, and I never got used to it. And she got a fisherman, and she had a happy life with him, but she never forgot ever the Isle of Skye and the mist, and who would hear and whose heart, wouldn't be moved by that. The difficulty that the people in Skye went through, and how thousands were, cleared from their lands and taken away, and that she was, across the ocean. People had to travel so far away, like our people who came here to Nova Scotia on the Hector. Yeah. So she remembers that, and she imagines what life would be like if people were all back, and we had the strength to take our land back, if we had the strength to take our culture back, and that that the English would have to leave, right. And that we would have Skye again.
And at the same time, England was pretty bent on colonizing the New World. And so anyone that they could convince to come across or force to come across, they would do it. But 300 years, here I am. I've returned. I guess it's never too late. I attend hall concerts, social dances. I listen to the pipes, the fiddle. I see step dancing, hear songs and stories, and many conversations in Gaelic. Some just when you're walking down the street, you can hear some people, or in the grocery store, which is kind of new to me. I still fumble through my words, but I'm trying. The faces of the people I encounter are so familiar, like cousins and relatives, because they are my cousins and relatives. To travel across an entire ocean and experience such resonance and similarity is humbling. I went to a hall function, and the sweets and the squares on the long table were exactly the same as I would find at home. That was eerie. Most of my days are spent learning Gaelic songs. The songs are accompanied by stories of when and why they were created. Some are sad songs of homesicknesses. Folks that found themselves in the prairies of Manitoba, longing for the sea. Some are love songs. Some are love songs gone wrong, where someone falls in love with a sailor. And some are songs for dancing. And I always seem to hear in them something about the sea, or beautiful hair, mills, sheep, seaweed, rocks, carpenters, fishermen, sailors. A portrait begins to form in my imagination. In my free time, I've been going on long walks, collecting memories and sensations from what I observe in the landscape. I walk down to the water. I walk into valleys. I see the pastures and the fields. I smell the fragrant plants that travel through the breezes. Sometimes I take off my shoes and let my bare feet touch the soil. I am remembered by the land herself. She makes me feel like a relative that I have not visited in a long time. It's a similar feeling to that of returning home after a long journey, or visiting my grandmother. I look over the hills to the water, and I feel that familiar tingle in my body that I get when I shake off, let go, relax. Safe. August 10th, 2019. After a month of traveling around the islands of Scotland, I return with Robyn to our community in Unama'ki, Cape Breton. I am woven in like a thread in a cloth.
Shake Breton cheer mo grai, chern and grooves and pion turnarst. Shake Breton cheer mo grai, cheer is all line chalev. Sfoa chani an sanam, koni an and cheer nam pion. Sket a cham ol halik gown, ni mi rando hier and clangen. Shake Breton cheer mo grai, cheer and grooves and pion turnarst. Shake Breton cheer mo grai, cheer is all line chalev.
And I remember that even though I was born on Canadian soil, my origins are from another place. I am lucky to have not experienced some of the painful events that happened to my ancestors. Although this is true, I did experience disconnection and disassociation with my own heritage for many years. The reason for this, I believe, also to be complex and made of shadow stories. I see how remembering can be painful. Some of us forget with a big glass of rum. Growing up in Cape Breton, it was a struggle to find social circles that didn't center around substance abuse. A fog in the mind that never seems to clear. Maybe it's easier. The Nova Scotia Council of Gaelic Affairs asked that I complete a presentation to give back to my community as part of the bursary. And because of the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, I decided that a radio documentary would be appropriate. And I found out that there was so much to present, and it's taken me a long time to reflect on my experience, to know what to share, and there's still so many stories that I left out. But there's one more important story to tell. Now, it's been 2 years since our trip overseas, and this trip allowed me to follow the ancestral thread of my own family, particularly the Gillises of Grand Myra North, where my grandmother lived. And she was the one who told me about the language, about the people, the farming, the music, and she is the reason that I know so much and that I even went on this journey. So when I went to Scotland, I visited those places, the Morar, South Uist, trailed along the hills, and I swam in the beaches. But coming to the end of completing this documentary, I realized that I hadn't fully completed the journey. I needed to go back to the land where the Gillises ended up to arrive full circle. Back to Grand Myra North, Myra Vor. So I called my friend, Francie Gillis, who was married to my father's cousin, and she still lives in the area. She agreed to take me down to the property. When we arrived, the first thing I saw was a large 2-story house. There it was, still standing, the siding tired and the roof shingle shriveled up like dried seaweed. This house was built by my great-grandfather, Martin D. Gillis, and it sits planted within a vast field of softly undulating grasses and the Myra River wide and running behind. This house hadn't been lived in for over 20 years. There was even a tree growing through the side of it, the windows and doors blown open, the grass beginning to take over the steps. I peeked inside the door and I saw the old wood stove and layers of flooring and wallpaper, white lace curtains and glass debris strewn about. The ceiling is caving in and the floors are open to the dirt below. The house is unlivable, but it's still standing. Right beside the house is the old barn. Half of it was the old construction and half of it a newly constructed addition, and I can see the hand-hewn lumber. I wrung my hands along the rough edges. The strength and the work it took to rebuild their lives after being deported from Scotland is beyond my comprehension. Francie takes me down into the field and we approach the river. The wind blows over it, cold through my sweater. It's late in October. This land also remembers me. From here, the old Gillis house looks like a dried seed pod whose seeds have long since scattered, finding new life in other parts and other places in the world to plant and grow. And the house is already on its way back into the earth. So I decide to sing a Gaelic song here for them, for my ancestors who made that journey, and for my own journey coming to a completion. He did you al yor, hee-dee-dee-you, al yor, only you down is spoiler. Niana gada velem fa, terian sanas and charge, smigalu, hogalet, shakan necklace lota, hee-dee-dee-you, al yor, hee-dee-dee-you, al yor, only you down is spoiler. Niana gada valengu nerian senasenu Bialum hin na milakrun Gudarakatu pa hidiriu Ral yor hidiriu Ral yor only yen down a spoiler. Vami nam go umarkjar, vami nam doi nuga, shuma skrip uk milusav, katamin trasta shala, hidiriu ral yor, hidiriu ral yor, only yen down is spoiler. Hee-dee-dee-oo, ral-yor, hee-dee-dee-oo, ral-yor, only yen down is boy, yeah. Francie looked at me after I sang the song and she said, "It's been a long time since that language was sung around here. And our ancestors would be smiling down right now." Chai and Jelliv Cluic Radio, Genev Lumheen, Bradley Murphy, agus Robyn Carrigan. Cluic Shin and Ceòl Cuideach. Tapaliv go Mary Beth Carty, Jeff Livingston, Francie Gillis, agus ha offish immerstin na Gaelic Alpanua. This radio show is created by myself, Bradley Murphy, and Robyn Carrigan. We also played the music featured in the show. Many thanks to Mary Beth Carty, Jeff Livingston, Francie Gillis, and the Office of Gaelic Affairs in Nova Scotia for supporting our journey overseas to further our Gaelic reclamation. We are very grateful.